Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining our very first webinar of what we hope will be many to come, even after this COVID-19 virus. We at SafeLine, first of all, we hope that you and your family are being spared from this horrible and quite aggressive disease. The world seems at war to an invisible enemy, which has taken us by surprise and where we have yet to discover an answer or a cure for. Nevertheless, some aspects in our daily lives and in our business lives remain unchanged. For instance, the up-and-coming revision of the normative EN 8128, which is today's topic. The Q&A will be at the end of the presentation, so I have not enabled it for the moment. But as I said, by the end of the presentation, it will be open for questions about SafeLine and specifically the EN 8128. My name is Nico Machiels. I am a technical commercial manager for SafeLine, which you all know is your partner in lift safety devices, emergency telephones, and other lift electronics. We're going to talk about, obviously, what the EN 8128 is exactly, what the scope is, what the current status is, what the main requirements are at the moment and after the change, so the new version, and how we as SafeLine adapted to it, or what we have in store to comply with the rules. And then lastly, a quick glance of the future of emergency telephones as SafeLine and we see it. First of all, the EN 8128 is a part of the EN 81 series, which are safety rules for the construction and installation of lifts, more specifically lifts for the transport of persons and goods. We have several parts in it, and part 28 is the remote alarm on passenger and goods passenger lifts. Now here's already a quite interesting thing about it, goods and passenger lifts. That means that lifts strictly taken for goods, so no passengers can ride the lift, are not compliant to this normative. The EN 8128 has, the last version at least, was in 2003. And now the new version came in 2018, more or less. We'll talk about it in the next slides. You can see during this period, it's 15 years of period, technology has improved, safety has improved of lifts, but nevertheless, last year and even in the beginning of this year, we still see some incidents and that the lift breaks down, not due to faulty alarm systems, but the longitude of people being stuck in lifts is quite drastically. You can see it on your left. It was on a Friday night, and on Monday morning, the person who was stuck in the lift was only rescued. That was due to faulty or not working properly alarm equipment. Sometimes the measures they take to break someone out is quite drastically, as you can see on your right. They had to tear down a wall to get to the person inside the lift. If you Google lift stuck or people being stuck in lifts for several hours, you can find very horrific stories. Even found an article, I think it was in Europe, of a woman being stuck for 5 whole days. Now you can imagine a little bit more now that we're all in some kind of lockdown. We can still move freely in our yard or in the house, but being stuck in an elevator for more than 2 days is not a pleasant idea. And that's why we have the EN 8128 rules that state how the alarm should work, and also to do some tests before we take it into service and also during the operation of the alarm equipment, so we can ensure that it works properly, so we can avoid some of the stories we can read here. In every standard of the EN81 series, there is a line that states that this standard is applicable to, in this case, alarm systems used for lifts manufactured and installed after the date of publication by the Center of European Normatives of this standard. First of all, in this case, it's not exactly true, because we already have a publication of this standard. Otherwise, we couldn't make this presentation for you. But it's not yet harmonized. So the new version is not yet harmonized. It's not been signed off on yet. There was a transition period which should have ended on the 1st of May. So that means in 2 weeks. But since that new normative has not been harmonized, not been signed off on, we are still in between the version of 2003 and the new version 2018, or what is likely going to be called the 2020 version. We expect that it will happen soon. Obviously, the current crisis has prolonged the date when we have the new norm in effect. So this actually means that if you produce a new lift or you install a new lift, you can still choose between the old version or the new version. As well, about modernizations or replacing old alarm equipment, you can actually choose which version of the normative you imply. Now, as goes for everything that is safety, not only for lifts, you can better be safe than sorry. So this means that we advise you to apply the new normative as much as possible. When we're going to look at the main requirements that the normative states, I have made an overview of the most important ones. As you can follow, the 2003 version is in black. The revised version, or the added version, because it's not really revised, they added some sentences to make sure that it's better for the safety of the user of the lift. Also some minor details in wording and stuff like that. That's in blue. And in red, you can read how that SafeLine supports this, or what is in our products, so we can comply with the rules. First of all, identification. Normative says that the alarm system shall provide the location of the lift due to the rescue service, even when testing. Now, we at SafeLine, we can send the location of the lift by the P100 protocol or CPC protocol, which is made up of DTMF tones. We can also do it by caller ID or by recorded voice messages. When you press the alarm button and the rescue service picks up the telephone, you can hear firstly voice message that was pre-recorded, stating that it is an alarm of certain address, and then switch over to voice communication with the trapped user of the lift. The rules also state where you should put alarm initiation devices. That means alarm button with speaker and microphone. And they say that it shall be installed at places where there is a risk of entrapment of users in the car and in the well, as an example. Now, elaborating further on that is that in some cases, it can even be required in front of the lift. When there is only the lift to exit the certain floor, that means if you have a machine roomless lift and the machine room or the controller is up on the highest floor, but there is nothing else to see on that floor, that means that there is no door, no stairwell or anything like that to escape that floor. You should also have an alarm initiation device. In the new version, they even go further and stating that in case of the car initiation device, it should be located on or adjacent to the control operating panel, so the button panel, and shall be at height between 850 millimeters and 1200 millimeters off the floor of the lift. Which is actually more or less the height that even disabled persons can reach the button and can speak and hear the rescue service properly. Now, all our systems, if it's the SL6 or the MX3, or in case of the SL2, all our systems can be equipped with at least 2 initiation devices. End of alarm is the first one you see on your screen. Now, end of alarm means that the alarm has been dealt with, so the communication has taken place with the trapped user, and also that the user is no longer stuck in the lift. Now, means to provide an end of alarm from the alarm system to the rescue system, or rescue service, excuse me, has to be on site, first of all, and also can be done remotely. We at SafeLine can initiate an end of alarm from distance by pressing the keypad. An additional function is in our systems that it can be automatically whenever there has been a communication with the user trapped in the lift. So whenever there was a successful call, the trapped user heard the rescue system and vice versa. When he puts down the horn or presses the hash key, it's that end of alarm that is initiated. That's not completely compliant with the normative, but it is an option which comes in handy whenever the user has been freed during the call. Battery power, or as they call it, emergency electrical power supply. When it is or where it is used, means shall be provided to inform automatically the rescue service as soon as the capacity of that electrical power supply is lower than 1 hour of functioning. That was in the old normative. In the new normative, they include inside that hour of function 15 minutes of voice communication. Now, why is that? That is because all systems, not even SafeLine system, but all system and emergency backup power supplies can comply easily for an hour of functioning, because the alarm equipment is in standby mode, meaning that it is not using that much current or that much power. Whenever you go into voice communication, the power increase is significantly higher. So that's why they stated in the new rules that you have 1 hour of function, including 15 minutes of voice communication. Now, it also says that you should have some sort of alarm going out to the rescue service as soon as the capacity is lower than that hour and 15 minutes of voice communication. So we need a battery check, and all our products have a battery capacity check function inside integrated. Now, if you want to learn more about how it works on the battery capacity check function, you can contact your local SafeLine tech support or salesperson. They're completely aware of it, but it is an important one since I see in my region that the battery failure, as we call it, is not being checked up by everyone. So that's a quite interesting one to see that they now stated it, that it should have a 1 hour of function in standby mode, including 15 minutes of voice communication. So it's more and more important to check up on your battery supply. In terms of signaling the user or passenger of the lift, about the status of the alarm equipment or the alarm itself. It used to say that a visible and an audible signal shall correspond with the requirement of the disabled lifts, so the EN 8170, and so on and so on. But now they stated actually a little bit further on that, because as you can see on the left picture below, an LED was quite sufficient enough to have a visible signal informing the passengers. But now they state that a yellow graphical symbol in accordance to an ISO norm should be illuminated when an alarm has been validated as a true alarm. Now the illuminated part is actually specified that it should be a backside illumination, and there is no discussion about it. We have two persons sitting at the table when the normative is being presented and being discussed. And in several meetings, certain people or several people asked to specify it. And at the latest discussions, it was backside illumination is no discussion. So that means that your pictogram, as you can see it on the right below, voice station should be illuminated from the back, not just an LED below the pictogram as we used to know it. So for the yellow, it should be illuminated when an alarm has been validated as a true alarm. That means that the alarm has went through to the rescue service. And a green graphical symbol in accordance to the same ISO norm should be back illuminated during voice communication. So when the voice communication is being taken place, it should be backside illumination continuously. Also, there should be an audible signal with a sound pressure level at 1 meter from the source between 35 dB and 65 dB, adjustable to suit the site conditions. That actually means that you should have control over the volume of it to suit the site conditions. When there is a lot of noise in an industrial area, you should be able to amp it up a little bit just until 65 dB. Or when there is a really quiet residential apartment block, you can lower it a little bit, not disturbing the residents when there is an alarm too much. Now, we redesigned the alarm initiation devices, as you can see, with the new graphical symbols. We already did that in 2017. The first one was the MX3 series that had the new pictograms or graphical symbols backside illuminated, and now we have it also for the SL6. The normative states that it should be continuously on when connected until the end of the alarm. That was in 2003. Now it should be continuously on when the alarm button is pressed, plus the audible signal. That is to reassure the passengers of lift that are being trapped that the alarm button is indeed working. We at SafeLine, we go a little bit further in informing the passenger and as well the technicians, as you will see. We will flash the yellow symbol 2 times per second when the alarm button is pressed. And we also flash it once every 5 seconds to state that the telephone line is not okay or not present. That one is a really big one, because if you can see it in real life, even though you don't know anything about alarm equipment, when you're just a passenger with no technological background, you immediately see the yellow light flashing every 5 seconds. The green is not on, you know something is wrong with the unit. So you can alert the maintenance company. For the green symbol, it should be continuously on when connected until the end of alarm. Nothing new there, but we go as well a little bit further, and we flash it every 5 seconds to state that the unit is okay and is in standby modus. And we will also flash it twice every 5 seconds when the alarm filter is activated. More on that a little bit later on, what alarm filter is and how the normative states that it should operate. Also, the new normative requires a visual information when the automatic test, or 3-day test as we know it in the business, has a failure. And that means that the graphical symbols, both of them, should be flashing in opposition, 1 second on, 1 second off. It means 1 second green is on, it goes off immediately after that. 1 second, the yellow goes on. For SafeLine, and I had a lot of calls already, for SafeLine products, especially SL6, is a little bit confusing in the beginning, because we used to have the graphical symbols flashing in opposition at the SL6 quite rapidly. I think it is half second each, when there is a failure in the bus. So the SL6 works with the bus system. If there is any issue with the bus communication, it will flash, but it will flash rapidly. If it flashes so slowly, like it states in the norm, 1 second on, 1 second off, it is an indication that there is something wrong with the automatic test. That's a really interesting one to remember. Alarm filter. The old normative said that there would be a provision made to enable the alarm system to filter alarm initiation. Now, why is that? We all know, when you are a technician at least, that one residential building, when there are quite young kids there and they like to press a lot of buttons. Most cases it's only all the buttons of all the floors, but sometimes it's also is the alarm button. I don't know what attracts them towards it, but we see it quite often. And to disclude faulty alarms, the normative makes an opening to be saying, okay, you can filter alarm initiations, but that is only when, for instance, the lift is on level on a floor with the doors open, then you can filter. There are 2 other examples being given, but that's the main reason. If the lift is running and there is no fault detected by the controller, you can filter out the alarm initiations. However, the filter shall be bypassed when the alarm initiation device, so the alarm button, is continuously pressed for an adjustable time between 5 seconds and 30 seconds. That means even if there is the lift is on the floor with the doors open, but there is a medical emergency taking place inside the lift cabin or adjacent to the lift cabin, when you press the alarm button more than 5 seconds, between 5 seconds and 30 seconds, the alarm should go through to the rescue service nevertheless. Also, in the same paragraph of the alarm filtering, the alarm button, when the lift is stuck, when the filter is not enabled, in the new normative it states that you can only have a delay of the button for maximum 3 seconds. That means in the old days we had 5 seconds to press the button, or 10. We can choose that in our programmation. For the new normative, it states that it can only be maximum 3 seconds. So alarm filtering is advisable in this case if you want to comply to that normative, to exclude faulty alarms. Now, all our SafeLine emergency telephones have an additional input which can serve as a filter, amongst other options which you can program as an input. Also, for an example, you want to monitor or you have a safety switch going off, you can also connect it to the input, and then you can state that it's a lift monitoring alarm, and it goes to the rescue service just as that on the P100 protocol. Regarding the re-emissions, if an emission fails, so if an alarm fails before the acknowledgement, the delay between re-emissions shall be reduced to the minimum compatible with the communication network. Nothing much important there, you will think, but it actually states in that paragraph, as you can read it here, that there should be a re-emission when the first alarm doesn't go through. That means when you press the alarm button and for some reason you cannot get connected to the telephone number that was programmed inside it, there should be a re-emission, a retry actually to the number. Now, all our telephones can be programmed until 4 receiving numbers, which will be dialed a maximum of 3 times each. In practice, that means when the first receiver doesn't pick up, or there is a problem with the network there, it goes to the second number. If the second number doesn't pick up, it goes to the third, and so on to the fourth. If even after the fourth number, the telephone line is not picked up, it will go back to the first one and try again. This cycle will be repeated 3 times. So in total, you have 3 times 4 is 12. If I'm not mistaken, you have 12 numbers to be dialed before you have to press the alarm button again. In reality, we see that if you have a backup number, so 2 receiving numbers, it's quite sufficient. But there is the possibility with SafeLine to do 4 numbers, and it will loop 3 times. Going to what we get at SafeLine the most questions about is the automatic test or the 3-day test. The old normative states that the alarm equipment shall automatically simulate the input signal of an alarm automatically, so that means the automatic test, and set up the connection to the reception equipment for testing purposes as frequently as required by the safety of users when the lift is used as intended, suiting the situation, but at least every 3 days. Now, that's a real big sentence. Let's break it down a little bit. It actually says you should do tests of the equipment, that it should call out to the receiving equipment, as you would do with an alarm button or an actual alarm. And you should do it as frequently as required by the safety of the users. Now, safety of the users, that's quite vague. I mean, there is an alarm equipment, so the safety is guaranteed if we can comply to the normative at the installation. But suiting the situation is an interesting one, because the 3 days that are being asked upon by the normative is actually 72 hours, and 72 hours, the most of us know, is the time that a healthy person can live throughout without drinking any water. With food, we can do a little bit longer, but water is 72 hours, and then it will get critical. Now, imagine a lift in Dubai, for instance, or in Australia in the middle of the summer. You can imagine that 72 hours without water there is more of an issue than you have it, let's say, in Sweden. So suiting the situation is an interesting one, because the local government can state based on those 3 words that you should do it every day or every 2 days. But the maximum, the normative ones is 3 days, 72 hours. Now, the new normative says that the graphical symbols should be flashing in opposition, indicating a failure, as we talked about before, And in case of initiation of alarm, the activation of graphical symbols shall operate normally for the duration of alarm. That means that your equipment, your alarm equipment, should be functioning just as the same as you would do with an actual alarm. Also, the line picking up and the audible signal and using the same telephone line or GSM module. So you cannot use a different telephone line to do your test. It should be the one that you are using for the actual alarms as well. Now we at SafeLine, we have alarm receiving equipment to monitor the automatic tests. We can program the interval of the tests, not even by days, but even by hours. We have a customer in Germany that has a test alarm every hour for each lift. Now this is a very specific situation, but you can choose to suit the situation actually. Going on, more or less about the documentation that is required to have at the site. That's a really important one. It should be on the site. The instruction manual of the lift, obviously, and including the alarm system instructions needs to be made available to the rescue service. That means that the manual that we provide inside the box with the product should be left behind at the lift installation itself. Also, technical compliance documentation needs to be present. We have a verification paper inside it with tests you should comply to, also with checkboxes to state if it's okay or not okay or not in effect for that particular lift. It's all inside the box, and those documents should be placed at the site together with the manual of the lift. Now, a lot of technicians said to me, we want to have the manual as well, even because sometimes another lift installer doesn't leave the manual behind. Now, all our manuals of the alarm equipment are also available when you use the Links app. The Links app is the application we use or we developed at SafeLine itself to program and test the alarm equipment via Bluetooth. When you log into the alarm equipment, let's say it's an SL6, you can also, when you're inside the programmation, you can also click on documentation and you will get the full manual of that alarm equipment. So your technicians have no longer an excuse to take the paper manual with them. They can leave it at the job site. There is also, I think it's 5 or 6 particular tests, and it should be carried out at the lift installation once construction has completed and the lift is taken into service. Those tests are described in the normative and as well in brief with those compliance documentation we put in our boxes with the products. Now, in the same Links app, you can transmit several types of alarm and monitor the DTMF communication whilst he is doing the alarm test, which is a quite interesting one to see what happens. If there is anything that fails, you can always take a screenshot of it and provide it to your local tech support from SafeLine. He can figure out what is going on due to the DTMF communication you can visibly see. So if you have not subscribed yet or not installed yet the Links app, I really recommend it. SL6 Plus and MX3 Plus have Bluetooth inside. That means that all the latest products you have now, MX3 and SL6, I think it's already 4 or 5 years. You can program or test afterwards by just Bluetooth. So that means that you no longer need a PC, you no longer need a COM phone to program with the star 89 star programations and so on. You can easily and visibly do it by the Links app. Now, That concluded the main requirements. Now let's see what we at SafeLine have in store, or what we think is the future of emergency telephones. First of all, we have released the SL6 4G and the GL6, which is our GSM module. But the 4G voice over LTE version. What is voice over LTE? Voice calling over the data channel, or as I like to compare it, it is like VoIP, so voice over IP, but over the 4G channel, so over the mobile channel, which has got quite a lot of interesting benefits. First of all, there is a faster transfer of the voice call. That means if you call someone, even on your cell phone, if you call someone, you could end up waiting for 7, 8 to 10 seconds when you hear the dial tone for the first time. With Volta, it's a lot quicker. It's in between 1 and 2.5 seconds, if I'm not mistaken. So it's quite a lot faster. What's the benefit of it? When you're in an alarm situation and you press the alarm initiation device and you can hear the dial tone immediately, so the call going through within the second, it's much more reassuring than having to wait 10 seconds until you hear the first dial tone after you pressed the alarm button and hear the number dialing. Also improved conversation quality. We did several tests actually all over Europe with several providers to check up on the status of their Volta channel. And we all could hear the improved conversation quality. It was even so improved that it looked like we were just talking to each other while standing next to each other. So the conversation quality is a lot better. Also, due to it's going over the data channel, so over the 4G channel, it has improved coverage. So 4G is more or less, unless you're in the middle of the countryside, miles away from a city. But even then, you can get 4G in several countries. The coverage is a lot better. So that means that the network connection is a lot better as well. Now, we at SafeLine, we made it backward compatible. So that means if you have an old SL6 or an older SL6 without 4G Volta, or a GL6 2G even, you can swap out the GSM module card and update the unit, and then you are ready to have 4G Volta. Also, I should note out, it's not because you have the 4G GSM module that you have 4G Volta. You have to check up on your local provider, and also in some cases they require a different subscription, especially in Norway, to have access to the Volta channel. So please double check before you install a Volta unit from us. Please double check with your provider that you are using or your client is using to see if they have Volta, and if a certain SIM card needs to be replaced or a certain subscription needs to be renewed. What else is in the future written in the stars for SafeLine or SafeLine emergency telephones? Well, it's our cloud solution. For those who were attending at Interlift, you already saw a glimpse of it. Our cloud solution is being named Orion, and it can connect emergency telephones to the cloud. Now, which benefits has that? Well, you can do the configuration from your desk. That means if you're on a job site as a technician and you don't have the comm phone, you don't have the Links app or whatever, you can do the configuration from your desk. Even if you have taken over the service contract of a certain lift and you need to reconfigure the telephone number for the alarm receiver, sort of the rescue service, you no longer have to send someone on site. You can do it from out your desk. You can also perform and monitor the alarm tests, specifically the automatic 3-day test, which you can use really helpful on a map. You have a map overview of it, so you can intervene a lot quicker than in the old way. You also have access to the digital lift library, which you can put in notes and even pictures, even not related to the alarm equipment. So you have a digital dossier of your lift, what is being changed and stuff like that. Even if some part is broken down or whatever, you can put it in the digital lift library and always consult it whenever you need it, whenever there is a breakdown of the lift. Next, we will see a film explaining it probably much better than I can, what it can mean for you. So that's the end of the presentation. I have opened up the Q&A, so you can ask your questions, type your questions in there, and I will answer it as quickly as I can by text or even live here in the live event platform, in the webinar platform. On your screen, you can also see the email addresses and the telephone numbers of the local SafeLine offices, which you can always contact regarding everything that has to do with SafeLine or the EN8128 version as well. Now, to conclude, before I start replying to the questions, this was the first webinar. I hope you enjoyed it. There will be many more to come, but you can choose which subjects we should tackle in the future. So let us know by email, by telephone, whatever, which topics you want to hear a webinar or see a webinar about. And we will try to comply as much as possible. For now, for those who don't have any questions, thank you for listening to me. Hope you have a great day and hope you stay safe as well as your family, and we will meet in the future. I see that there was a problem with the movie clip, apparently. Let me try and fix that for you. I will play it one more time, but by another method. You can ask your questions. I think it's on your right of your screen. You can click on Q&A, and there you can type your questions in. And this should be the clip once more, hopefully with sound this time. I see that there is a question coming in. Is there any audible instruction inside the cabin if there is no response from assigned number and when it's not reachable? There is no audible instruction when there is no response. What the only audible instruction or audible information you can provide is the same one as you can send out to the rescue service. That means a pre-recorded message stating, please stay calm, your call is being transferred. Whenever the cycle is done with all the numbers and no one has picked up, the graphical symbols will change back to normal state. That means that instead of the yellow continuously on, the green one will go flashing once every 5 seconds, stating there's something different. Since the passenger could not hear the rescue service, the normal reaction should be that they would press again and try again. Now, in reality, like I said, we have a lot of customers stating 2 numbers. And those 2 numbers are proper alarm receiving numbers. And I didn't hear a story yet of that not being enough, that there was someone stuck in the lift because the 2 numbers didn't pick up 3 times. So I hope that answers your questions. Next one is multiple intercom mandatory. Intercom is a completely different discussion. When we're talking about intercom for the technicians, as far as I am aware, it's not obligated. Whenever, in case of a fire, it can be demanded, but then the lift also should be EN 8172, I think it is, and those are really stated where they should have a intercom station. But that's a completely different subject. Maybe a good subject to do a webinar about next time. Let me see. Yep. Tim, the presentation or the recording of this webinar will be available on our website. If everything goes okay, it should be there this week already. Maybe tomorrow. At the soonest. The input for the alarm being tested, then we're talking about alarm button testing. The SL6 has the possibility to have an automatic alarm button tested, but then you need the alarm button itself to be equipped with a coil that can attract and detract, and so you can test the input of the alarm button. Michelle, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's Schaefer who has a version of it. We showed it, we displayed it at Interlift last year, and it works quite perfectly because it was working for 4 days. Every 5 seconds it was attracting and testing the alarm button itself. The presentation itself, we need to discuss if we can make it publicly. I will let you more about it, but it will probably be at the same place at our website when where the webinar will come. I have an interesting questions. How long are the analog systems like SL3000 and SLCC going to be supported? SLCC will remain supported for the next several years. We will not do further development on it since we can do the same thing by our cloud platform. But it will be still supported. SL3000 is still available as a new product. We do not recommend it anymore since we have a better product, the SL6, which can handle digital telephone lines as well, which the SL3000 needs a strictly analog telephone line. How long is the SL6 still going to be supported? I cannot answer it, but I guess given the new normative coming up, I think it will be end of next year that we will phase out the SL3000. Then I have a other question. With the automatic test, is there an audible instruction for receiver and passengers also? If you have the pre-recorded message sounded out at the cabin side, when there is an automatic test, you will hear the same voice recording, because the normative states that it should work, the automatic test should work as there is an actual alarm. And in the actual alarm, if you have the option enabled that you hear a pre-recorded message, you would hear it in the automatic test as well. Let's scroll further down. There are a lot of questions, actually. That's good. Will the pictograms blink or flash with every technical alarm? No. They will only flash with a automatic test. And if there is no telephone line present, you will not be able to receive an alarm about it, which is logical. But there will be at the voice station, so the alarm initiation devices, there will be no graphical symbol. When you have a battery failure, you can see it on the LEDs of the emergency supply, at least at SafeLine. That means at the SL6, you have the middle LED that states the status of the battery, GL6 the same one. The emergency supply UP2 will be replaced by a new version quite soon. That also will have the LED for it. But at the voice initiation devices in the cabin, there is only the signaling when having an actual alarm and the test alarm. During the location message, is the microphone for passengers active as well? No, it isn't. It opens after the message is being is finished, actually. That is for the voice recorded message. If you have the P100 protocol in place, it will send out the P100 in the identification code first before opening the voice communication. When you only have caller ID, whenever you pick up the line or the alarm receiving equipment picks up the line, likely goes over to voice communication. I hope, Daniel, it answered your questions. Another question, will the SLCC be included in the cloud service? I have an SLCC on site. We are working on a solution for that. So to give the full information in September this year, we will have the full version of Orion, including the connection to emergency telephones with all the benefits I showed you. And then the SLCC story will remain separately. Now, we're looking into two different solutions to have people like you that have an SLCC on site to connect it to our cloud platform as well. By this summer, we should have decided and have it in place so we can release it with the update we have in September. So there is a solution in the making. I just cannot specify at this moment which one that will be. Is there any key inputs required to acknowledge the receiving calls? That depends on which operator mode you have. We have an option that you can program how you can handle the incoming calls. We call it the operator mode. If it's on automatically, you automatically have a acknowledgement to instate the voice communication. We also have an operator mode where you have to press the 4 and the 7 key to switch between the microphone of the receiving end and the microphone of the car. So it's depends actually on which operator mode you are working. What is the same is if you press the hash key, you will close down the communications. So for people where there are a little bit difficulties regarding the quality of the telephone lines, the actual normal telephone lines, we also recommend to, instead of placing the telephone on the hook, press the hash key first and then put the telephone on the hook, so it will end the call. If you have the automatic end of alarm, it's quite important that you do that, because the end of alarm will be sent out by ending the communication. I have someone asking local indication for battery failure in the SL2 and MX3 when using SL Pro. SL Pro is our Windows-based software where you can program and perform the tests as you can do in a Lynx app for the laptops or desktops. I cannot select the possibility for the output relays. With the latest firmware, you can. We adapted the firmware to comply to the normative, and then you can state where the output relays should be. I think you're actually using, if you're using the UP2, there is still no output on the UP2, so you cannot connect it to your MX3. But the MX3 and SL2 itself have a battery capacity check. They check the incoming current. More on that, or the specific way we test it, it's too elaborate to do it in 2 minutes now. You can better contact by email or your local tech support guy. And if I am your local tech support person, send me an email. I think you probably have it. Does MX2 comply with EN8128? No. And for one particular reason, and that are the graphical symbols, because the MX2 still have the normal LEDs as we know it. They don't have the graphical symbols, so strictly taken to the normative, to the new normative, it doesn't comply. Now, since we're still in the gray area where the new normative is not harmonized and the old one is actually expired,